Congressman Pittenger, may I say I'm very delighted to be here again and speak. And I must say these 2 days have been unbelievable, mind-blowing, and I must say the knowledge you get home with after 2 days here is amazing. I think one thing is getting the knowledge, another thing is to create relationships to new people, exchange business cards, create alliance across the world. If I look how many nations we are here, how many continents we are here, and people saying, oh, it's nice to know this, it's nice to have this information. And collecting knowledge, distributing knowledge, creating transparency, that's been my job for the last 25 years. I have a company which only works with carriers or telecom operators across the world, providing the information about two things: the technological developments, business models distribution, and public fair regulation, what's happening in the political system, and what's the impact. But I also grew up during the Cold War in Denmark, and I visited a lot of the East European countries before the wall went down, saw the wall went down and see the prosperity we have seen in East Europe and how they evolved. I've traveled and worked all over Africa, or many countries in Africa, Latin America, Asia, and so on. I've been to 120 countries. One of the things which have scared me is China. And the China we had in the past is a different China that we have today. China we have today have a different view of many things. Human rights, freedom, which is a fundament of the modern society. So another thing is happening, the world is changing. And the world is changing that way that the world is getting digitalized. In the past, we used telecommunication to communicate with each other. I made you a phone call, you made a call to me. But now it's the fundamental of digital society. Connect banks, connect companies. All our information is digitalized. Many of us maybe have our driver license on the phone as an app. Many of us have our health insurance on the phone as an app. All these things getting more and more digital, more and more connected. And I've been speaking for many governments, and tomorrow I'm speaking for State Department, and basically, as I say, what is the most vital infrastructure? The F-35 planes, which the US is providing to a number of NATO countries right now, or telecommunication infrastructure? I must say telecommunication infrastructure is more vital, and my opinion is, if people think it's okay to use Chinese telecommunication infrastructure to build a digital society, it should be okay to buy Chinese fighter planes. Telecommunication infrastructure has been vital in the war in Ukraine. It's been amazing to see how they have been able to use the internet. Look how the president have been online talking to parliaments all over the world. Telecommunication has actually been very important in getting Ukraine's voice out to the world, so they understand, the rest of the world understand what's going on in Ukraine. Next slide. In Europe, there are some countries who make some mistakes. They're very dependent on Russian gas. Right now, the Russian gas is turned off. The gas pipes in the Baltic Sea has been blown up, or something have happened. And if we look at being dependent on Russian gas, is that smart? No, it's not smart. It's smarter to be dependent on Chinese telecommunication infrastructure, and the answer is, of course, not. A lot of people have knew this in this country back in 2005. In 2012 and 2011, there was made a bipartisan report describing what is Huawei, what is ZTE, how they're working, why are they not trusted vendors. Next slide. So it's important to say that we went from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, and basically a lot of things is happening, but 5G is so different. Everything will be connected. Now in the past, it was communication between persons, now communications between machines. Machines, persons, machines. Persons, persons, machines. And it's all connected. Just look at the information you have on your mobile phone. Look what you're capable to do with your mobile phone. Next slide. So what we have done back in 2020, we did a mapping of all the Chinese telecommunication infrastructure in 102 mobile networks across Europe, in 31 countries. We've done a similar mapping, which actually, the first time I presented is today. Tomorrow is State Department. We go public with it next week, so you get the first view. But we've done a mapping of saying how much of the 5G which have been deployed in Europe the last 2 years is Chinese. 2 years ago, everyone in Europe agreed it was not smart to use Chinese equipment. It was not smart to use this equipment in the networks. And basically, when we go back in time, we could see actually that there was maybe a lot of people who talked about these things. But the question before we did the survey and did the study was basically have we become better in Europe? Have we delivered on what we promised? Next slide. There's 3 ways you can get Chinese equipment out of telecommunication networks. It's very easy. Every time we have a technology shift from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, we rip and replace all the equipment. So the cost of ripping and replacing is 0. There's no cost. You can do it voluntarily by the operators say it's not a good idea to have Chinese telecommunication equipment. So they do it by themselves and say, I don't want to do this. That's one possibility. Another thing is that you create a transition process where you basically work with the companies and discuss how do we get this out and how do we handle this. And the last one, you make some legislation like you've seen here in the US and a number of other countries where you put a ban on Chinese equipment and say, we don't want our digital societies to build on top of Chinese telecommunication equipment. Very simple. I prefer the first model. I think a lot of people will not prefer the last model, but I think I think we can all agree about the first model is probably the preferable. Next slide. The worst part is that if we go out and see what's been deployed, when we did the 2020 mapping, 4G was fully rolled out. And basically, it was fully rolled out, so it was easy to do the mapping. Now we are just in the beginning of rolling out 5G. So this is not the end game there where it will be. But we've done a mapping and say which country have actually succeeded to get rid of Chinese equipment, which countries have similarly partly Chinese equipment, and which countries have a huge problem. Next slide. We compare to 2020 to 22, and we actually can see, yes, there's a number of countries which have moved out of this market. That's very nice. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes. So if we go back in 2020, we could see how big percentage of the telecommunication mobile networks equipment that was Chinese. And Europe was looking very bad. When it comes to 2022, we see some countries which have become green, where we actually see the countries basically now are in a situation where they have decided not to have Chinese equipment in their networks. And the operators have actually executed on it. Countries like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, the Baltic countries. But basically, on the paper, this looks very nice. But you have to look at it from another perspective. You have to look at it, how many people are living in those countries. What's interesting is that it's less than 4% of the mobile subscriber in Europe which lives in the 3 Nordic countries and in the Baltics. But it's about 22% of the population in the European Union which lives in Germany. And if the infrastructure had not been replaced in Germany, if the 4G Chinese infrastructure in Germany had been replaced with 5G Chinese infrastructure in Germany, we have a problem. We have a huge problem. The reality is today we have some countries in Europe which are in the process of doing things here. Romania have done a great job and they're in the right track. But we have countries like Poland which have made a good law but have not been approved in the parliament. We have countries like Spain was an issue. We have countries like Germany where 60% of the telecommunication infrastructure in Germany almost are Chinese. 58% to be accurate. We have countries like Italy. There's some rules that in Italy they maybe are doing some changes, but that was something which came up to my knowledge this morning, and we haven't got the last confirmations from the Italian government yet. Next slide. What we can see is that it's fine that small countries understand to rip and replace Chinese equipment. But if they do that, and they don't do it, that is not help for the whole European Union. The European Union is still dominated by Chinese equipment because the big countries still are huge users of Chinese equipment. And next slide. And can I get another slide? The key problem today, one of the key countries in Europe, which I feel is a problem, is Germany. Germany represents roughly 25% of the mobile subscribers in Europe. Germany basically is so that 57% of the mobile 5G networks in Germany today are Chinese. That number is higher than it was in 2020. It's gone up. Germany is more dependent of Chinese telecommunication infrastructure than they are of Russian gas. Is that smart? Definitely not. On the other side, you can say that Germany, unfortunately, is not so digitalized. It's a country where they still use fax and they still use cash big time. It's quite common in Germany when you buy a car, you pay cash. So it's still a very not so digitalized society. And in that way, you can say, okay, they're not so dependent on this, but they're still dependent because a lot of German industries, of course, being very digitalized. Next slide. You could say it a different way. In Berlin, Huawei have a larger market share than they have in Beijing. Beijing, they're sharing the market with ZTE. In Berlin, there's a O2, Telefonica are using in Berlin equipment from Nokia, but the rest of the German operators are basically using Chinese equipment. That means when all the civil servants in Berlin, all the people working in Berlin, all the ambassadors, everyone in Berlin use their mobile phone, they send their traffic to a Chinese network. And this guy here, he's actually Darrell Williams. He's the head of the US troops in Europe and Africa. He had 20,000 soldiers in Germany. Every time his wife, his kids, or any of his 20,000 American soldiers use their mobile phone in Germany, the traffic goes to a Chinese network. So if we say it in a different way, the key provider of communication solutions to the US forces in Germany are China. I think it's a little bit scary. Next slide. So basically in 2020, where we pointed out this problem and the EU started a big process, and a lot of countries agree that should happen a lot. 44% of the infrastructure in Europe was Chinese. Now it's gone down to 41. But at that time, it was 4G infrastructure. Now we talk about 5G infrastructure. At that time, the 5G infrastructure was 0. And you had the opportunity to decide not to use Chinese equipment, but operators decided to do it, and countries accepted that the operators did it. Is it smart? You decide. Next slide. So let me say it very simple. And I asked a question yesterday. The US sanctioned Huawei have not reduced the capability to produce, marketing, and sell 5G equipment across the world. We talked about yesterday about the sanctions, the entity list, and we see the media that US put sanctions on the Huawei. Yes, it hits their mobile phone business, but not their infrastructure business. And my question is, we heard earlier today of how China basically can use the financial threats to countries with a huge step if they protest the day when China take over Taiwan. But the answer is the same way as the Russians turned off the gas. What is the Chinese turned off the telecommunication across Europe? How many hours will it go before the first bank go bankrupt? I tell you, it's few hours. It's maybe less than an hour. Next slide. So next year, or the beginning of next year, we will publish a similar report about Latin America. And I was in Colombia 3 weeks ago, and I had a presentation. In Colombia, there's only one network without Chinese equipment. The three other networks is either 100% Chinese or 60% Chinese. But in Colombia, you have at least one option if you want to use a non-Chinese network. So that is at least a good thing. Next slide. But another problem when we look at Latin America is that the cloud which is provided in all these countries is coming from China. And the same in Africa. Huawei built clouds across Africa. The same do China Mobile. The same is happening in Latin America. And the three big hyperscale cloud providers from the US, Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, AWS, and Google, have basically one cloud for Latin America and one cloud for Africa. The Chinese have multiple clouds. So even there, the Chinese is ahead. Next slide. So basically, the question is, how many countries are ready to President Xi he's delivering on his promises when it comes to Taiwan? I just want to tell countries which basically he got them financially by the one ball, and when it comes to the telecommunication, by the other ball. Sorry, my language. Next slide. So I think it's very important to say this is a huge problem, and we need to fix it. We need to create transparency. We need to take a dialogue. We need to take decisions. And some of the decisions can be tough. They can be tough for companies. They can be tough for governments. They can even be tough for politicians because they will get under huge pressure when we say these things. But may I ask you a question? If you bought a car and the dealer said to you, I would like to give you a discount on your car, would you like to have that? But there was a little by. There was no airbag in the car or no seat belts. This is about security. And our national security cannot be measured in simple dollars of what it costs to build these networks. National security is about freedom, human rights, and our possibility to be able to live in a free world where we can say and do whatever we want to do. Thank you.